I talked last time about how the fact that God saved us and called us to a holy life. Now, I want to kind of go back to that idea. First of all, we've got to have this connect in our mind that it's that God has saved us. We didn't do anything to get saved. The terminology of "I got saved" kind of has bothered me since I was a kid, really. It's as though it's kind of like I went to the store and got a loaf of bread, or I got the measles, or I don't. God saved me. I know it's a little thing and it's just me, but I prefer to say I was saved. This is an interesting concept. Many people in the world today believe, first of all, there are lots of people who believe they don't need to be saved. They're good enough. Life's good. Well, they're the old evangelists of the early 20th century used to say, nobody's ready to be saved until they understand how lost they are. And I suppose that's true. I do think that when Paul writes, he has saved us, he's making the assumption that you realize you can't save yourself because you can't be that good. In Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8, he says, "It is by grace you have been saved, and that not of yourself." Let me back up. My brain's getting all cloudy here. It's by grace you have been saved through faith, and that not of yourself. It's a gift from God, so that no one can boast. Okay, put all that together, and what you get is you didn't save yourself. Nobody can boast and say, well, I was so good, God had to say yes to me. That was the Pharisees' view of relationship with God. That you keep the law, and they really did have a very strong view of essentially the Levitical law. The law and the core of the law comes from Exodus chapter 20 when God gave the 10 Commandments. But there were 360 some specific, to me, they feel ticky-tacky, but they were real items within the law. Maybe it's the laws within the law, but the Pharisees were meticulous in their observance of the law. And sometime I think Jesus at one point said, you guys are incredible. You tithe right down to the mint and dill out of your garden. And that's like saying to the minutia of your life and income. Right? I mean, it's like, okay, go to the spice cabinet and take out a tenth out of every one of those. Okay. And their thought was, by doing this, by observing the law, we will get ourselves to a place where God has no other option than to say, we're good. I think that wasn't the point of the law. I see 2 points in the law. One is, these things that God prescribed in the law to the Israelites while they were still wandering in the wilderness were given to keep them from doing things that would be harmful to them in terms of their health, in terms of physical health, in terms of their mental health and their spiritual health, and the security and safety of the entire group of people. Okay, that's the first part. Here's the second part. And Paul talks about this in the book of Galatians. that one of the functions of the law is to demonstrate the fact that you can't obey your way into this perfect relationship with God, because nobody can perfectly obey the law. So the point of the law was to get us ready for a Savior who has done everything. There is nothing left to do to reestablish an unbroken relationship with God for us. He saved us. You can't be good enough to not need saving anymore. Oh, and by the way, once you are saved, you can't do anything to make God keep you saved. Well, that kind of goes against the grain for a lot of people. I mean, that goes against the grain of what I grew up understanding. That, God saved you by His grace, but now you better come on, get with it, because if that, you got to stay saved now. I'm less and less inclined to believe that, but I do see that what Paul said, He saved us and called us to a holy life. Okay, so He saved us, and then He called us to live in such a way that our behaviors reflect the fact that we are saved. And here's another piece of this holiness thing. He called us to a holy life. One of the primary pieces or aspects of the nature and person of God is His holiness. And so I think it's safe to say when He called us to a holy life, He was calling us to demonstrate our likeness to Him. And that has a couple of meanings. I don't mean we demonstrate it to Him so that He'll give us a nod. I mean, we have this likeness of Him, and that gets demonstrated in our behaviors. That is a holy life. And then he goes on to say, not because of anything we have done, but because of His own purpose and grace. There it is. There is a restatement of what Paul wrote in Ephesians. Oh, interesting little connection here. And maybe not so little. Where was Timothy serving as minister, pastor, leader? What church was Timothy working in when Paul sent this letter to him? Well, it was a church at Ephesus. And in what book did Paul write, we are saved by grace through faith, and that not of ourselves. It's a gift of God so that no one can boast. Oh, that's in the book of Ephesians, as though the theme cannot be overemphasized. Paul comes back to it, and he comes back to it not just here, but in many other places. You were not saved and called. Okay, both. You were not saved and called because of anything you've done. It's not like God said, dude, that kid, that boy, that girl, that man, that woman, they've got it. Let's call them up from the minors into the majors. It's not like God said, ooh, such potential. They deserve. No. Not because of anything we have done. And I think you could even say, or might do, but what? Because of His own purpose and grace. Now, the idea of purpose, the older I get, the more significant that concept becomes. I'm kind of on the 17th tee of life, and I realize when I don't just on a daily basis. I have a very light day, hardly any sessions on my calendar or commitments in my book. I struggle because just laying around and doing nothing feels good for a little while, but it doesn't take me long to go, oh, wait, I don't like the way this feels. And really it comes down to I need to feel that I am living with purpose. You don't live with purpose until you live on purpose. So I believe this is part of the calling to a holy life, is focusing on purpose. Okay, that's our response. But it doesn't begin with our response. It begins with God's own purpose. What was the purpose of Him saving and calling us to a holy life? Interesting concept. Great question. What was His purpose? I believe that's a really deep subject. And a person could write, if not an entire book on it, then lots of chapters within a book. What is God's purpose in saving us and calling us to a holy life? Well, whatever else it is, I think it's very accurate to say God's purpose was to adopt you into His family. And as a result of that, one of the things that's going to happen is because we now carry His DNA, right? And that's not what legal adoption does, but in the sense of being adopted by God into His family, He not only does He give us the status, but we get His DNA. Metaphorically, that's the holiness side of things, okay? And when that happens, we will notice others who are not connected to Him in this way, and we will, as His ambassadors, as His kids, we invite them. Okay, that's one of the purposes. When you keep backing it up, it comes down to, why would He save us and call us to a holy life? My thought. Because He loves us. It's not about how lovable we are. It's not like the puppy or the kitten that you just can't not love. No. I have many moments where I am not lovable. This is not about my lovability. This is about His love for me. Because of His own purpose. And out of that purpose, He applies grace, giving me what I could not deserve. If I deserve it, it's not grace. If I could earn it, then it's something else. And it might be good, but it's not grace. Grace is getting what I don't and couldn't deserve. I don't know where that's going to take you today, but one of the places I hope it takes you is to embrace this concept. God's purpose in saving you and calling you to a holy life is because He loves you. And He did this through His grace, not your effort. Maybe we just need to rest in that. I don't want to pull any of the meaning or power out of it, but maybe we need to relax in that. Maybe. I'll see you next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.